the rare privilege to acknowledge the contributions and the long fruitful journey of stalwart mathematicians Professor S.G. Dani, Padma Bhushan Professor M.S. Raghunathan, and Field Medalist Professor Elon Linden-Strauss. So to begin with, I now request Professor Tarun Das to introduce Professor S.G. Dani.
Very good evening to all of you, and at the outset, it's my proud privilege to welcome Professor Linden-Strauss on the campus which is known as the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda. And we are very pleased to have you. Last year, one of our anyway, it's a proud moment for all of us, and I, on behalf of the Department of Mathematics, and I think I have some official capacity to also welcome him on behalf of the Faculty of Science on this, and let's give him a big round of applause for being here. And the character he has shown is, just landed and drove. And I just asked him, would you like to check in first? And so, if you want me to, else I'm comfortable. So I said that. So it was great to listen to him. Of course, we listened to him at Hyderabad 2 years back. So thank you very much for making it here. My job is to talk, to give a brief details about Professor Dani, with his kind permission, whatever I'm going to say here. He was born on 3rd June 1947, the year India got independence. Proud parents, Mrs. Radhabai Dani and Mr. Gopal Krishnaji Dani. He was born at Belgaum, Karnataka. His early schooling happened in Hukeri and also in Belgaum, two places. 10th standard he passed from Belgaum, Sadara's High School. The 12th standard, that is intermediate, plus 2 stage, Rani Parvati Devi's College, Belgaum. BSc, he did Bachelor of Science from Institute of Science, Bombay. Master of Science, University of Bombay. PhD, Tata Institute, TIFR. His thesis advisor is right next to him. He has, he's recipient of many awards and distinctions. I would name few of them. Third World Academy Science Prize in Mathematics for 2007. Srinivasa Ramanujan Medal of the Indian National Science Academy 2010. Invited speaker at International Congress of Mathematicians Zurich 1994. The prestigious Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Prize for Mathematical Sciences 1990. Fellow of TWAS, the Academy of Sciences for Developing World 2008, and Fellow of the Indian Academy of Sciences, the Indian National Academy, and the National Academy of Sciences. And he has also served as council member of various bodies in our country and abroad. He has been associated to many numerous publications, to name a few. Editor of Proceedings of Indian Academy of Sciences, member of the editorial board of Ergodic Theory and Dynamical Systems for I guess 5 or 6 years, and also currently is editor of Ganita Bharati. He has served in various administrative capacities for our nation. He chaired the National Board for Higher Mathematics for almost 5 years, from 2006 to 2011. He was Vice Chair Executive Organizing Committee in ICM 2010 Hyderabad. He was also President Commission for Development and Exchange of the International Math Union 2007-2010. He has visited and travelled very widely and have collaborated with many distinguished mathematicians. I won't name them with whom I think just needs a click. 83-84. Yale University and then University of California, Berkeley. Then he was at Göttingen, Germany, 1990-91. University of Chicago, University of Warwick, Mathematics Institute, University of Venice. No, not mine. In fact, I don't have it, so it's okay. And University of Cambridge, UK, and Isaac Newton Institute also. So these are some names, some places where he went and he has collaborated. I requested him for some of his major contributions, but the list which he has given is a subset of the list of papers which Dillon and Litterbeer has actually used, so I need not go back to them. It's a proud privilege for our department to host this felicitation function in this university campus, and I'm very glad and I'm happy for that. And thank you all for patience. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Professor Dani, now that you are known to all of us so closely that we hardly feel that we don't know you, but yet it's going to be impossible for us to measure the depth of dimensions. I'd now request Professor Ravi Rao to invite Professor Dani's students and participants for reflection of their thoughts.
First of all, we got a wonderful idea of the different facets of Dani even in this photography session. I've never seen him look in those ways. So Tarun has talked about many of his academic here, but we would like to also know many things about his personal, how people know about him personally. For example, I'll just add one small thing which will also come out in the talks of others, I'm sure, and that is his contribution to our cultural values in Tata Institute. He was in the cultural committee and as the chairman. He decided that one should not just have cultural events. You know, it's okay to have cultural events, he continued those things, but he also felt that why not try to improve the culture of each person by making them have the chance to learn. So he got a lot of people to come to help us try to learn either dancing or singing or various things like that. And he was instrumental in, he has a tremendous contacts in the cultural world to his own cultural interests. And this enabled to bring many people. And this was also later on continued by Baroda when he was the chairman. So it continued for Dr. Agarkar, Professor Dani, Professor Baroda. I was in the last stage of that and was seeing all of this all the time. And I think it made a big difference to the institute, and it's still continuing today. So I won't say more. I just ignored what she said about students and participants because I'm going to first call his guide, Professor Raghunathan, to say a few words.
It's a great pleasure for me to be here this evening and say a few words about my interaction with Dani. Dani came to me way back, I don't know which year it was. He joined the Tata Institute in 1968 or 69? 69, right? Yeah. And it's a few years later, maybe 71, 72, something of that kind, is when he came and asked me if he could register for a degree with me. And by that time, actually, he had written a paper jointly with Jyotsna, his wife. I don't think they were married at the time, they were fellow students. And they had written a joint paper together, which talked about the density of orbits in a divisional, in a vector space over a divisional algebra into the action of some group, something of that kind. Now, and then when he came to me, he also had started studying ergodic theory. In fact, I remember he had he was studying one of Sinai's papers in translation. And I did not know very much about ergodic theory. I probably knew a few things like the Birkhoff ergodic theorem, basic things perhaps at that time. But once he embarked on this and wanted me to be his guide, I thought I should also study ergodic theory with him, which I did. And whatever little ergodic theory I know comes from that period. Yeah. That year when he was started studying ergodic theory, I also started studying. And in some sense, to call him a student is totally inaccurate, because he learned things independently, and I was a fellow student, if you like, of his, rather than a guide in a serious sense. I did, however, suggest some problems for him at a later point, because I realized that the kind of things that he had done with his wife, Jyotsna, could be formulated in terms of algebraic groups, language, and then very general statement could be got out of it. And I proposed that statement, which he proved later. The thesis itself, he was concerned with showing that translations in semi-simple group mod gamma are semi-simple translations are column-graph automorphisms and so on. In fact, I learned what a column-graph automorphism with him when he studied the paper of Sinai. He also went on to show that there were all Bernoulli shifts and things like that. And the thesis is a nice piece of work. And there is this famous statement by Bacon. It's a great pity that those who would like to teach are the ones who need it least. I have been very lucky in that I've always had students who needed least from me, and Dani is the first example. Actually, I had a student before him. Dani was my second student. And I remember one thing about, when he, essentially the thesis appeared as a paper in the American Journal. I remember that one day he had sent the paper to the American Journal, and one day he received the paper back with no letter. And he was quite upset, naturally. And he came to me and said, "This has happened." I said, "Let's wait for a few days." 2 days later, the letter came accepting the paper without any comment. No revision, nothing, the paper was accepted. Then Dani told me 2 days back when that thing came, I was cursing you for having asked me to submit it to the American Journal. Then, of course, at this point, he was very happy. And I was mildly worried, but I thought the paper was good enough for American Journal. In fact, it could have probably been published in journals or the best journals, but at that point I told him to send it to the American Journal. So, and as it turned out, the American Journal accepted it without any correction, any changes, whatever. So I was quite happy that it was done. So clearly, the very first paper he wrote, and it's not the first paper, the second paper he wrote, already he could do a professional job, so that it didn't require any revision. Has always been very meticulous. That's one characteristic which I've seen him. And after his thesis, he went his own way. I kept track of what he was doing, and because I was also interested in the kind of things, the orbit closures and things of that kind, I was very much interested. In fact, as he proved more and more theorems, that was the background in which I made my conjectures. Dani's theorems were very important for me to formulate my conjecture. And also, of course, two things influenced me. One was Margulis' paper on the unipotent not going off to infinity, and reading that proof. I didn't understand the proof very well to begin with, but I struggled with it. And then Dani's theorems are coming up, and I put them together. Somehow I arrived at the conjecture I made. And he gave it the machine theoretic twist, which ultimately enabled people to prove it, enabled Ratner to prove it. Without that machine theoretic twist, it could not have been proved clearly. Or in any case, if it can be proved, the proof is yet to come. So, Dani's machine theoretic twist is important. And as Ellen told you, though Dani made the conjecture, Ratner chose to call it Raghunathan's measure conjecture. It is entirely Dani's idea to formulate it in machine theoretic terms, and it also based on what he had done. He had proved the unique ergodicity theorems for horizontal flows and things of that kind. So it is very natural for him to make that conjecture, not so natural for me to make it. And when I told, in fact, I met Ratner. When I met Ratner, I told her this is not correct to call it Raghunathan conjecture. You should have called it Dani's conjecture. So her statement was, "Oh, it's after the closed orbit conjecture, it's a natural statement." maybe natural to ergodic theorists, not natural to me in any case. So, and from then on, Dani branched off. No, I kept track of it for a short while about what he was doing, but things were moving far away from the kind of interest I had at those times. I was mostly interested in the congruent several problem and related things at that point. So I wasn't following it in great detail. And in fact, I did not know that he had put down my conjecture in his paper as my conjecture. And in fact, that's how I got to be known in the ergodic theory community. Otherwise, I don't think I would have been known in the ergodic theory community at all. He is the one who, so I have to thank him for that. made the ergodic theorists know about me. Well, soon enough, he had become my colleague on the faculty at the Tata Institute, and was proving wonderful theorems, as you saw from the lectures of Strauss and Ladrapier. And he also increasingly took part in administrative activities connected with the promotion of mathematics. And once he took up a responsibility, he took it very seriously and did a perfect job of whatever he handled. I would take on responsibilities, but I don't think I was always all that meticulous and careful. It's sloppy, but Dani was a contrast. He would do things very meticulously and carefully. And he has handled several responsibilities which were mentioned by Tarun Das earlier, all admirably well. And of course, I also, we lived in the same housing complex, basically neighbors for a long time. So I got to know Jyotsna also very well. And Jyotsna, from the beginning, having been a mathematics student, I knew her from the beginning, even before they were married. And but even later, we have always had some kind of contact all the time at a personal level, apart from the official contact I've always had. It was always pleasant to meet and talk to them and be with them. As you all probably know, the entire family consists of mathematicians. The two daughters also went into mathematics. Pallavi is here, but the other daughter is not here. And one of the sons-in-law is also a mathematician. Or is the other son also a mathematician? Both sons-in-law. So it's all mathematics. I don't know what else they talk about when they get together. Anyway, so, well, not very much more I want to say. Let me wish him many more fruitful years, and also to Jyotsna, many more fruitful years to come. Jyotsna has always been a great strength behind him. I have observed that over the years, and I'm sure she'll continue to be that. Thank you.
You got a list of participants, and in that order I'm calling names. So, now can I request Professor Ladrapier to say a few words?
So I don't know, but I know that the name of Dani was familiar to me because of the results. So I have the impression of having
In 82, I think that was not sure.
82? Maybe. But I knew your name long before because I was studying the paper, I was familiar with the paper, and enjoying this nice thing that Elon talked about. And okay, I was not deceived. I mean, the person was corresponding at the level of the paper, so it was a great pleasure to meet him. And yeah, I also try to remember because this is the opportunity to give, not nasty, but dubious anecdotes about the people, but in fact I have none to say. No, the only thing I can say, I'm very pleased to know you and to appreciate your work and to appreciate the person. One thing I was happy to see 5 years ago in Tata, I'm not the only one. I mean, all persons around you are really appreciating you and praising you, and very happy to have this opportunity to say it to you, because I mean, I'm shy, you are shy, it's not easy to always easy to say that that we appreciate you, but I mean, this kind of opportunity is a good opportunity to do it. Thank you.
A couple of very short things. I I first met Professor Dani when I was a graduate student at Chicago. Pallavi was a year ahead of me, and Professor Dani had come, and he was giving a geometry seminar which I went to. Now I had come to Chicago, you know, like most grad students, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was pretty sure that I didn't want to do geometry, and I didn't have any idea what dynamical systems were. But I went to this talk, and it was this beautiful talk about hyperbolic geometry and Diophantine approximation, and it had this incredible sense of sort of play, of fun, and many different things coming together. And you know, I can really pinpoint that as the moment that I sort of got hooked on the idea that this is what I want to do. And so from there, it was, you know, the rest of what I've done has been, you know, increasingly following and using work with Professor Dani, and so it's been a great pleasure to sort of been personally inspired at that very first moment. So that's this one story I wanted to share. The other story is on a personal level. The summer after that, I heard that talk, I was traveling in India, and my father and my parents being, you know, sort of worried as I was traveling around. When I got to Bombay, sort of unbeknownst to me, my dad had sent Professor Dani an email saying, you know, he's traveling around, I don't know where he's staying, can he come and stay with you? And so they very nicely took me into their home for a few days. I got to meet people, I got to chat with people, and, you know, it's just an indication of how warm and how nice, you know, the whole family is. And so those are the two, the mathematical and then the personal. And finally, I would like to sort of recognize something that I'm sure other people will talk about as well. But in recent years, Professor Dani's rigorous application of scholarship to the history of Indian mathematics. In particular, this is a place where a lot of people say lots of things, and it's very political in many ways, and it's very, very nice to have a scholar of Professor Dani's caliber applying rigorous scholarship and taking very seriously some of the ideas and just being very careful with them. So thank you very much.
I can't remember when I first met Danny, but I do know that when I first met him, he was called SG. And apparently at some stage after this, people started asking him what SG stood for. But nobody knew at the time. And I have vague memories. Maybe we were in a car, and we were driving from Germany to Rennes, and you had a visa for Germany, but you didn't have one for France. And we had to drive fast through the customs so that we wouldn't be checked or something like that. That's the first memory I have. The second one is that we were in Göttingen together and we shared a flat for a month. Now Göttingen, what do they say? This is a traditional German university. It is a fountain of knowledge, and the students come to drink. But it was very difficult at the time to get a proper cup of tea. So that was the first weekend. I think I went to visit my mother, who was living in London at the time, and I brought back some tea from England, a packet of tea, but he didn't like that. So he sent a telegram to Jyotsna, and she sent a kilo of fantastic Indian tea over, and we were drinking tea for the rest of the night. That was fantastic. And let me finish with a little story like Jyadev's story, except from the other end. I also had a son who flew off to India, and he started traveling around at, I think it was the age of 17 or something, even before he went to the army in Israel. So there were arguments between me and my wife, and she was saying he should come back, and I was saying, what do you want? He should be in India or he should be in Lebanon at the time. But anyway, I also sent a message to SG and Jyotsna. I have this kid, please take care of him. And they did. They introduced him to India very nicely. And they introduced him to Indian music, and he's now in Bombay and he's studying flute, Indian flute, Bansuri in Bombay. So anyway, I think I won't take any more of your time now. Thank you for listening.
Before we leave, Professor, I would like to know what was the tau in your name when you gave the talk?
Sorry?
You said he's called SG, but you wrote tau in your name.
Tau.
In your name there was a tau.
Tel Aviv Universe?
Oh, that was how it was.
That's my name.
I thought your name was tau now. Okay, thank you very much. I have actually got We questioned him earlier, so I hope he doesn't mind. I would like Professor Tom Ward, he can say a few words. Is he around? I'm here. Do you want to say a few words?
No, not especially. I thought to. I think I would have nothing to add personally, really. Of course, my appreciation is immense for mathematics.
Thank you. Okay. Next speaker, Professor Nimish Shah. You don't see me? Yeah, reference.
So my association with Professor Dani is from the first day I came to Tata Institute for an interview. He was in my interview committee. He taught analysis course to me for the first year. Then he had organized really one of the best instructional conference. That was an Ergodic Theory in Tata Institute just after that. And then I asked him that can I do some, write some master's thesis with him, and can I read this book? And he said, you can read this book, but better to, he gave me a paper of Margulis. That time Margulis had proved open-hand conjecture, and it was a handwritten cyclostyle note of this open-hand conjecture proof of Margulis, and Dani had been working with Margulis on this further things. And he just gave me this, and he said, read this and generalize it for SL2C for your master's thesis, because this should be the same idea. And this was one of the best things that happened to me. I was at the right time, at the right place, with really right person. Professor Dani and Professor Raghunathan had taught some B groups just before that, so I just got into the right thing. And we didn't speak too much during my studies, but few times whenever I talk to Dani about something, he just said just few words. Oh, okay, it is horospherical subgroup, some such things, and this it should work in this manner. Just few words were so important that they did the right job. So he said little but very important things. One of the great thing I learned is just by his way of life and conduct. So Dani used to go to office. Certainly I would find him at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I would also find him in his office at 10 o'clock in the evening, at night. And you would also see him with Mrs. Dani walking on the seashore, sometimes late in the evening. And as a graduate student, it was great for me, because if I have a problem, I would go to the seashore, and roughly I knew the time, so I wait for him. They will be walking, and I'll ask him, I'll join, start walking with them. They were very friendly, and ask him questions, and he would tell me, and we'll go to his office, talk, and so that was great. Another thing I really admire of Professor Dani is that any task he takes, he does it with an absolutely great detail and amazing sense of responsibility. So some things which I only admire at later stage is that the way he handled the Journal of Indian Academy of Sciences, the proceedings of the Indian Academy of Sciences for several years, and it made the journal really great, certainly during his tenure. And there are many things I could say, but I have been with him for many, many years, all through my career, and I'm very thankful to Professor Dani and Mrs. Dani. They were our great people for us. So I wish many years of happiness and good mathematics for Professor Dani. Thank you.
I wanted to say have already been said, so. But it has been a pleasure to be his student and collaborator over the years, and I would say he was right for me as a guide, because he was very gentle and he was always available whenever, any time of the day or late in the night, you could call him, and he never said, no, not now. and he would explain things. And many people said that he speaks so little, but he always was ready to explain mathematics to me. And both Professor Dani and Mrs. Dani have really been supportive to me personally as well as academically, and they have treated me like a daughter over the years, and I'm really happy that they are still part of my life. And the many other things, like Professor Dani is so rational and such a fine human being that, and his administrative decisions are also so good that over the years I have also taken advice from him, and also he has been part of many other committees, like for example Women's and in TIFR, because of his being such a rational human being. And one other thing, I look up to him. He, as you all may know, he has more than 100 papers and counting, and he also keeps working in different areas of academics. They all may be related, but I find that he keeps changing his area a little, and I'm trying to learn that from him. Trying to change a little bit and work in different areas, though of course I'm not, I'm just trying to relate him. I'm not as successful as he is, and I'm always happy to collaborate with him, though sometimes it's a race against time to make sure that your contribution, my contribution is significant enough to be part of the paper, because he is so quick that you have to make sure that you work doubly hard so that you stay in it, otherwise you would prove everything and you would not have anything left to prove. So, but it has been a pleasure to work with him, and I'm really happy that I have been his student, and I'm still his student. I learn many things from him. And Mrs. Dani, Jyotsna Dani, also turned 65 this year in November, and I wish both of them happy life and fruitful years in future. Thank you.
Professor Dani, and also I must say that we didn't ask one of the organizers, namely Vidhi, who just told that she has to speak. Okay, so let me continue with the small list which we made initially. We thought we'd make a list and then we will ask everybody who wishes to talk can also talk. So the next one is Professor Ergodic.
Dani, and I didn't know him personally, so I sent him a message talking about it, and he was very receptive. Since then, we have met many times, we have collaborated many times, and to be close to him, I think he had a strong influence in the course of my work. And I think that Dani is the kind of person that I would like to have have met earlier. That I'd like to see. I could see more often. And I wish him all the best. Thank you, Dani.
I would like to take this opportunity to thank Dani for his very kind hospitality, especially on my first visit to India, which took place about 14 years ago. And after a meeting, he hosted me for a week at the Tata Institute, both in his office and in his home. And he made my first trip to India especially memorable. And I would like to thank him and his whole family for that memorable trip. And once again, I wish him, as before, as many others have before me, have many, many more years. Many, many more good years in good health.
To felicitate my friend Sri Krishna Dani on his 65th birthday. Like many others, I do not quite remember when I first met him. Maybe Raghunathan mentioned his name to me, but I have felt his presence since the late 70s. I remember in 1983, I got some references to some research papers in measure theory and ergodic theory from him, which I am still trying to digest. Coming from a geometry topology background, my training had stopped when I understood that in many interesting group actions, the orbits are dense. But it took me some years to realize that below the surface of dense orbits, there lies a deep ocean of ergodic theory, which is Dani's specialty. After that, I frequently met Dani in India, Europe, and the US. I was continually impressed by his deep contributions to the whole saga of dynamics of unipotent flows and its applications to Diophantine approximations. Let me say a few other things here. If you consider the contributions to mathematical wisdom tradition coming from India before 1950s, there are some individual delta functions. Before 1950s, the scientific activity in India was highly disorganized. At its best, the emphasis was rote learning and teaching at the undergraduate and master's level. There was no encouragement to research activity. There was just one mathematics journal which was financially supported by individual contributions. But after the 1950s, the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research came into existence with full and generous support from the Government of India, which itself came into existence, as most of you may know, in 1947. TIFR was fully dedicated to research. The first wave of mathematical contributions from TIFR is associated with the names of MS and Raghavan Narasimhan, Seshadri, Ramanan, Ramanujam, and Raghunathan. In my opinion, Dani is the representative of the second wave, along with Patodi and Gopal Prasad. Dani is Mr. Ergodic Theory and Diophantine approximations of India. Along with his many students, some of whom are present here, he has brought these subjects to life in India, and many young people are joining that community. Dani has contributed to the mathematical life of India outside his own research, as many people have said before. After Raghunathan, he directed the National Board of Higher Mathematics. As is said already, that he is soft-spoken, not assertive, but takes his decisions very thoughtfully. I also had the pleasure of working with him as an editor of Ramanujan Mathematical Society's lecture note series, and we have become good friends over the years. As was already mentioned, his other really major contribution to the Indian history of mathematics, the society which has been formed for this purpose, he is the president of that society. Like Professor Benjamin Weiss, I should tell you some mystique about his name and something significant in Sanskrit. His first name is Sri Krishna, who is one of the gods who we believe actually existed. His last name is Dani. That may well be pronounced as Dani. It means a person who is not only Jnani, that's a clever person, but also a Dani, that is a person who is generous with his time and energy for others. Dani, my very best and warm wishes for you for many more productive and peaceful mathematical years to come. Thank you.
I wish Professor Dani on his birthday. His birthday was in June, but anyway, it's a year-long celebration. And I have been very fortunate, and actually many people have stolen the thunder, they have said whatever I wanted to say. But one thing I do remember, the first time I met Professor Dani was when I came for the MBHM interview. It was 14th of August 1985. And I instantly really liked him a lot because he asked questions which thankfully I could answer. And later on, when I became a student, and he was the obvious choice because for some reasons in my MSc days I got fascinated with geometry and curvature and stuff, and also analysis, so I could relate to Professor Dani, who was very kind enough to guide me. And he's a multifaceted personality, as everyone has said. And one of other things, because of his multifaceted personality, I think one could relate to him on different platforms. And as everyone has said, he speaks less, but whatever he speaks, it's food for thought. You go back and learn, and you are enriched for the few words that he has said. And his papers are very lucid. They speak for his personality. And another personal thing that I share with him is the language that I speak. It's called Kannada, my mother tongue. And Dani grew up in Belgaum, and he reads. He's widely read. And recently, since I have also been doing some translations from Kannada to English, or English to Kannada in mathematical thing, so Dani is also read, and so I have a different connection with him, and I treasure all these connections. And above all, as everyone has said, his family has been a great source of strength and happiness. And not only, as Raghunathan said, his family as mathematicians, he has really extended his family, and all of us are in the family. And I wish you and Jyotsna and all the family many more productive years. Thank you.
To having unfolded to us these petals of Professor Dani's life. At this outset, on behalf of the organizers and the Department of Mathematics Faculty of Science, we'd extend a warm welcome to Professor Yogesh Singh, the young and dynamic Honorable Vice Chancellor of the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda. Let's all greet him with a round of applause. Professor Yogesh Singh, along with Professor Dani, with his best half, Professor Jyotsna Dani, and daughter, Dr. Pallavi Dani, to please come down to the dais, and request Dr. Tarun Das to please escort them to the dais. I request Professor Yogesh Singh to...
Good evening, everyone. I must say I'm really overwhelmed by the variety of things that were said about me. It's really difficult to relate to so many adjectives and qualities that were mentioned. you have really been quite generous in acknowledging whatever little I have been able to do, maybe for you in general and for the wider cause. Well, I wish I really had been able to solve some fundamental problems, been able to make some fundamental contributions, and I wonder how things would have looked in that situation. I sort of wonder whether 60 or 65 is the right time when people should be showered with the kind of pleasures, etc. I think if it were at an earlier stage, it will tell you what you should be doing in the rest of your life. Well, it's a bit late, but I'll still take the message and try to conform to whatever has been said in the form of, well, as acknowledgement, but more as perhaps as expectation, and hopefully I should succeed in the remaining little life. I do not want to go into commenting any individual comments. Thank you one and all for the appreciation and love that has been extended to me all through the career by all of you, including my family, which has made this, whatever little I have been able to achieve, to be possible. Thank you very much.
How could we miss this opportunity and take the rare privilege of felicitating Field Medalist Professor Elon Lindenstrauss.
Participants of this conference, Professor Lindenstrauss, well, he himself has given a talk, and so you all know him very well. But I would like to say a few things. Professor Lindenstrauss is the recipient of, or he won the 2010 Fields Medal at the ICM in Hyderabad. And first, there are many things for us to be happy about. So this was the first ICM India hosted. This is the first Fields Medal for an Israeli mathematician, and for us it's the first Fields Medal in homogeneous dynamics and applications of ergodic theory to number theory. So I'm very happy about it. Professor Lindenstrauss did his PhD under guidance of Professor Benjamin Weiss, and we are so happy that Professor Weiss is here with us at Hebrew University, and his thesis was about entropy properties in dynamical systems, or entropy, and all of the work then and the later work involves very deep work on entropy properties in dynamical systems. So he continues to do that. About his mathematical career, he, after PhD in 1999 from Hebrew University, he went to Institute for Advanced Studies in Princeton. Then he went to Stanford University and Courant Institute in New York, and he became a professor of mathematics in Princeton University in 2004, and then he decided to go back to Israel, and he went back to Israel in 2009, and he is there. His list of awards are the following. So there are many awards, but I have just taken a few of them. In 2001, he received Blumenthal Award. This is the best thesis award by American Mathematical Society. In 2003, he received Salem Prize. It's a prize given by France. There are several awards, but I'll come to all the way to 2009. He received Ergodic Prize in Israel, and then he received also in 2009 Pharma Prize, and as we all know, in 2010 he received his Fields Medal. So, this professor is in the stars.
Honorable Vice Chancellor to do the honors of the felicitation. Thank you, sir.
Privilege for me to introduce Professor Raghunathan, who is very well known to all of us. I am going to just say a few words about his career rather than say more about that. I won't say too much because he has too much to say about it. Let me begin by saying his full name, which I came to know very late in life actually. His name is Madhabusi Santanam Raghunathan. He was born on August 11, 1941 at Anandpur, Andhra Pradesh, at his maternal grandparents' place. The family lived in Chennai, and he studied in Chennai at the PS High School, Mylapore, and the Madras Christian College, very famous college of that time. He passed his SSC in 1955. Later, he went to studied intermediate college at St. Joseph's College, Bangalore during 1955-57, and then returned to Chennai and joined the BA Honours in Mathematics in Vivekananda College. When reading about this, I remembered Ramanujan's also changing places, but for different reasons. Then, in 1960, he joined Tata Institute of Fundamental Research and worked in a research problem suggested by Professor M.S. Narasimhan on deformation of linear connections and Riemannian metrics. And he solved it in 3 years, or 2 years I would say, because the first year is usually a training period. But as in those days, it takes a long time to get your doctorate, even after you finished submitting your thesis, and he got his doctorate only in 1966. After which he went to IIS Princeton and was there for a year. Of course, he has traveled in several places and is very renowned centers in US, Europe, Japan, etc. He's gone all over the world. Though I remember he's telling me that he never went anywhere without his wife. So he's one person I know who always took his wife along with him wherever he went. And that helped me a little bit actually. Because he was my guide too, and at the time of my writing my thesis, he was in France. So I could write my thesis peacefully and so his main work has been in discrete subgroups of Lie groups, which has been the central objects of his research, and he has written a very wonderful book, Discrete Subgroups of Lie groups, which was published in Spring of Atlantic in 1972, and the complaint is that it's not available very easily, so perhaps he should think about getting a new edition. I once remember talking to Nimesh, and Nimesh said that this was a book from which he learned a lot. So it certainly should be a book which should be reproduced, maybe an Indian version. So, other than that, he took a lot of interest in administration in India at a very young age. He always said that he liked the power it gave him. And it certainly, he knows how to use it. So he wrote basically the constitution for the National Board of Higher Mathematics, which Narasimhan, Professor Narasimhan, his guide, became the first chairman, and was later on Raghunathan who took over from Narasimhan, and later on Professor Dani also was the chair of that. Now, I won't say much more, except to say that he is still holding the chair. He was an eminent professor at the Tata Institute and had the Homi Bhabha chair, the first mathematician to hold that chair. And right now he is the head of the National Center for Mathematics, which is trying to spread awareness of mathematics and higher mathematics in the country. With that, I think I have not said enough, but that's what I can say at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ravina. I now request Professor Das to kindly escort Padma Bhushan, Professor M.S. Raghunathan to the dais. And I request our Honorable Vice Chancellor to please be there to do the honors. I request
કહું તમને એક મિનિટ ઉતરી જાઓ